natural solutions to money, relationships, wellness, and more. Shine a light onto your day and into your life. Power Your Life with Dr. Joanne White.
Good evening and welcome to Power Your Life. I'm your host, Joanne White. My first guest tonight is the very courageous Josefina Rivera. On November 26, 1986, serial killer Gary Heidnik picked her up off a corner, took her home, and had sex with her. He then chained her to a water pipe in his basement, and he kept her there for 4 grueling months. He then captured 5 more women and killed 2 of them. Josefina escaped in March of 1987 and saved the remaining women and herself. Her testimony put Heidnik on death row, and years later, she's sharing her incredible story and in her recently released book, Cellar Girl. Josefina will be with us in a few moments, but first, I'd like us to take a look at the case. I can't watch it.
You got, what's his name coming?
Gary Heidnik had an IQ of a near genius, but his intelligence was channeled into evil, and he was consumed with his master plan. He lured 6 women into his basement and chained them to the pipes. He tortured them with household appliances so they couldn't hear, and blared the radio at full volume to mask any cries for help. He beat them with a shovel, and to prevent them from teaming up, he made them beat each other. He raped them daily.
One was led to ask, was this master plan the act of a madman, or was it so calculated that it could only be the work of pure evil? The only way we can try to understand a man like Gary Heidnik is to look back at his past and to examine the factors that may have created such a person.
Gary Heidnik had an unusual childhood. He grew up in Cleveland and lived with his allegedly abusive father in constant fear of being beaten. His father once disciplined Gary by hanging him by his feet out a 3rd-story window. When Gary wet his bed, his father would hang his sheet out to show the neighbors and humiliate him. After falling from a tree at age 6 and suffering brain damage, Heidnik's behavior seemed to change. Animals he had once nurtured, he began to tie up and hang from trees.
Heidnik is interesting because he exhibits so many of the experiences that are common among serial killers. The childhood abuse, for example, animal torture, injuries, and also a history of mental illness.
Gary Heidnik claimed to have delusions throughout his life, once hearing the voice of God as he drove, who told Heidnik to start a church. He installed himself as bishop and held services to a handful of churchgoers just above his dungeon of torture, even as his victims suffered below. Heidnik's master plan was to force all of his female captives to bear his children so he could start a community of his own followers. But as the months passed and none became pregnant, his cruelty became even more extreme. Heidnik experimented with a new torture. He shocked his captives with jolts of electricity. The first captive died of electrocution. Weeks later, a second captive died, this time of starvation. Heidnik put the remains in a blender, mixed them with cans of dog food, then forced the others to consume it.
This is a guy who was consumed by systematic, prolonged torture, not over hours, but months. It was truly the kind of thing that sickens anyone who hears the story.
Heidnik's trial centered on his sanity, and his defense claimed psychosis.
During Heidnik's trial, there was a court psychiatrist who quipped that if there was an Olympics for mental illness, Heidnik would win a gold medal.
But attributing his crimes to mental illness may be too simple.
Heidnik was a much more organized and integrated person despite his grandiosity and peculiarities and moments of mental illness, and he was nowhere near as crazy as Ed Gein.
Heidnik had opened a brokerage account and turned a small investment into more than $500,000, from which he bought a Rolls-Royce and other luxury cars.
You can look at Heidnik's past and see psychosis, you can see paranoia, abuse, all of these things that may have contributed to what he did. But what he did, systematically torturing those women over months, is nothing short of evil.
Here with me now is Josefina Rivera. Thank you so much, Josefina. I've watched this. This is the first time that I've actually seen this, and I'm trying to hold back my tears.
Right.
So I can't even imagine what you endured.
We endured a lot. We really endured a lot. I truly endured a lot, especially in the beginning, being the first one. I could just so remember just sleeping with handcuffs behind my back every night and chains on my ankles, and I would wake up and just think it was a dream, you know.
Or a nightmare, really.
A nightmare.
Right. During that time, what kept you going? What kept you alive throughout all the torture and the cruelty that you endured on a daily basis?
You know, through the strength of God, and I just said I'm going out of here the way I came in here. If I walked in here, I'm going to walk out of here.
So that was really that's what kept you focused
yes,
on that you're going to get at, the sense of determination.
Right.
What was the interaction between you and the other women?
It was really, really very difficult. I mean, we're in a situation where none of us know each other, and each one is dealing with different mental stability. And you know, I tried my best, being the first one down there, trying to calm everybody that came down. It didn't always work, you know, but, you know, you try to, you know, sit down and talk and try to keep them, you know, you ask them about their family and their kids and their life, and, you know, try to make it a little bit normalcy for them as much as possible, you know, and try to say, well, hey, you're going to be all right, you know, we're going to try to get out of here alive. And it was difficult at times. It was. When Sandra died, me and Sandra had been there from the beginning, so when Sandra died, it just really broke my heart, and it just really made me see the severity of Gary Heidnik.
Did you think you were next after she died? Did you think that he was going to go after you?
Oh, at that point, it was like anything could happen. You know, it was like a day-by-day thing. It was just, each day was worse than the day before. You know, and it just never seemed like it was getting any better.
Did you ever think, Josefina, that you were going to get out of there? Did you ever plot it? Did you ever talk
I
to the other
didn't plot it. I really didn't realize how much Gary Heidnik actually liked me and how much I was getting through to him until the last few days. I knew I was going to get out of there one way or another. I mean, that was like my ultimate goal, was to make sure that I got out safely and he couldn't get to me and he couldn't get back to the other girls and get rid of them, you know. And so I don't know if there was a plan, but it worked out.
But a sense of survival that you
Yes.
had to keep yourself going throughout, no matter what.
Exactly,
That time.
and trying to deal with Heidnik himself, and then trying to deal with the other girls, and trying to put something together. It was amazing.
Now you still have some injury from what he did with
Right,
your ears.
yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, he found out that we could hear him underground coming in and out, his car pulling in and out of the driveway, because his
walking.
basement sat underground and we could hear him walking through the house. So he decided to take screwdrivers and damage our eardrums with screwdrivers.
Did you?
To dent our ears so that we wouldn't be able to hear him coming in and out.
And you still have difficulty
Yeah.
with hearing.
Oh yeah, everything I listen to is loud.
Now, you have children, and you were reunited with your children.
Yes, I
recently.
was.
How's that?
Ricky and Zornay, I put up for adoption right after the Heidnik thing happened. At the time, the foster parents and Zornay and Ricky were very close, and they were in a loving home. I personally, mentally or physically, wasn't mentally capable of taking care of them. So my decision for them to allow them to adopt them was a good thing. me and LaToya stayed in touch. She came back and lived with me when she was 12, and you know, we stayed close.
I want to talk about this for a little bit because this is your book and it's really very moving. I read it and very powerful. Why are you writing this book now?
For people to know me, and for people who don't know me to know me.
And
I want also so that people can understand my side of the story, because a lot of people, there's so much stuff that's on the internet and in the press that people are writing that's just not true. You know, a lot of people say I was an accomplice, but I mean, there's no way I would accomplish myself into a basement and chains.
Right.
I'm hoping other women will read it and maybe get something out of it, and see that, you know, you just, in life, you just don't know who you're meeting. There's like not a stamp you could put on somebody's head that says I'm a nut or I'm not a nut.
Right. So it's about taking care of precautions, taking care of yourself,
Self.
and trying to be as safe as you possibly can.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Coming up, I'm going to take a closer look at how women, just like Jofina, facing difficult situations can overcome them using their inner strength. Stay tuned.